If you could only choose two tools to mix a song, I would suggest faders to get the level balance right and pan pots to get your stereo balance right. That's how important panning is in mixing. Out of the 5 mixing domains that we're working in, that's level, stereo, depth, time and frequency. Pan pots are pretty much exclusively what you'll be using to get a good stereo balance. But there are many different panning techniques that you can use to achieve this balance. And in this video, you're going to learn about how to use complementary panning to achieve a great stereo balance in your mixes. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what I mean by complementary panning, but just a quick overview. Complementary panning is when you're using one element on the left and one element on the right that complement each other. They could be the same instrument, they could be completely different instruments. I'm going to show you an example of both. The best thing is if we just take a listen. So I've got a song here, a mix here with 2 guitars. Let's have a listen to the first one. Okay, and then the second one. The 2 guitars, they sound different. They're played by different people, different guitars. If we only used one of those guitars, though, let's have a listen. It sounds fine, but it's very central, and there's not a huge. It doesn't feel like there's a huge amount going on, especially for the chorus. But if we bring in the other guitar, if we pan the second guitar almost all the way to the right and the first guitar almost all the way to the left, let's hear the difference. Just the guitars. So they play quite differently, but they sound really great together. It really widens it out when you've got the 2 complementary guitars, one on each side. So it's quite a common technique using 2 guitars, one panned left, one panned right to complement each other. Let's take a look at a different example where I'm using completely different instrument on one side than I am on the other side in this mix. So in this middle section of this mix, I've just got a guitar, everything breaks down, and you can just hear guitar hard, panned hard right. So obviously that's a bit harsh, you wouldn't want it panned hard right for too long, but just in that little breakdown to break the song up, make the mix sound more interesting, we've just got that pan to the right. But then let's see what happens. So we've got this cowbell coming in hard right as well, but there's no other percussion on the left. We've got the other guitar coming in. It's louder than the guitar on the right, so it's balancing it out. Completely different instruments, but it doesn't feel fatiguing to one ear or the other. It just sounds right. It sounds balanced and it sounds really cool because we've got a lot going on at once. And then we're back into the song. And then again, I've got this shaker that comes in, which is panned 78 to the right, pretty much hard right. So again, on its own, it sounds, it's going to start sounding a little bit fatiguing, but because we've got, because we're using conventional panning on the drum kit, so we've got the hi-hat panned slightly to the left, like it would be for a drummer. When the drums are in, you've got that shaker on the right and it's complementing that hi-hat, which is panned slightly to the left. And then one more quick example. In this mix, there's a few little sections where I'm using complementary panning to keep things balanced when it comes to the little extras that are laid on top of the verses. So, for example, in the second verse, I've got this piano here, and panned it over to the right, Most of the other instruments are panned centrally, but this one's panned over to the right a little bit. And then I've got these this synth, which is panned slightly to the left. And then a guiro, which is panned slightly to the left as well, balancing it out. So if we have a listen to the whole thing, everything's mostly central or panned hard left and right for the most part. But then when this comes in, it doesn't sound harsh on the left because you've got the synth balancing it out, complementing it. And it just gives it some movement. It makes it more interesting, not having everything in the same place, everything down the middle. It's part of what makes a great mix. It's not just about keeping everything balanced, exactly balanced across the left and right at all times. You can play with it and use different instruments and experiment and create great mixes. I had a client once who I couldn't really convince of this. He'd sent over a mix for me to do, and he had a couple of different guitars in there, but he wanted everything all the time on the left and the right. He didn't want any variation between the stereo fields, no sort of complementary panning as such. He just wanted, it was basically centrally panned the whole time, because everything was duplicated on the left and the right. That's how he wanted it. Now when I'm mixing for clients, I'll mix in a way that sounds best, and that normally works out for the client as well. But sometimes clients have a certain sound in their head that they really want. So in that instance, I had to do things slightly differently, but typically making use of interesting complementary panning techniques can make for a really cool stereo balanced mix that sounds interesting as well. There are loads of other different panning techniques that I could show you, and we'll be covering those in other videos. So hit that subscribe button for more mixing tips and tutorials. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.